Hello everybody and welcome to the commented games with Antelacus. Antelacus, it's me, an Italian national chess master. I will comment with you some of my daily chess games, those I consider the most interesting ones I played recently on the platform chess.com. Let's go to the game of today. This game ended in July 2020. It was a quick knockout, so 1 day per move, daily chess of course, 1 day per move, and it's very interesting because it was a planned battle. Okay, as you can see, I reversed the board because I was black in this game. And let's start with this game. And with the first move, e4, c5. Sicilian game, as you can see. But suddenly, something changed. Because white played c4. And now, is this still a Sicilian or an English? Technically speaking, this is a Sicilian, e4, c5. And according to some names, this is a Sicilian Staunton-Cochrane variation. But the spirit of the opening will be soon the spirit of an English game, as you can see. And when I saw this move, I was absolutely convinced that my opponent wanted to reach a Marzi-Bind. So, knight f3 and d4, trying to play a Sicilian with the Marzi formation. And so I decided to avoid this setup. And I played first of all knight c6. This is absolutely a logical move. And after knight f3, I played e5 to stop d4. And I'm convinced that I read into my opponent's mind, because he was convinced, very probably, that my next move would have been g6 or d6, something like that, or also e6. And after, for example, g6, d4 takes, and this is a Marzi formation. And for some reasons, I didn't like to play this formation, because if my opponent is trying to play absolutely a Marzi formation, it's very probably he knows very well how to play this setup, this pawn setup, the Marzi formation. And so I decided not to let him to reach this formation. And I played e5 and take back white's move. In this sense, very probably the best move is knight e2 in this position. And we will see why in a few moves, because after e5 I would have played e5 anyway. The knight is on e2 and not on f3, and that will be very important. Back to the game, e5, and after e5 I decided, before e5, because when I played e5 I had in mind a particular setup, very known setup, g6, bishop g7, d6, knight d7, and then castle, and sooner or later f5. For example, normal moves, g6, d3, bishop g7, bishop e2. I play simple moves with white, d6, castle, knight g7, don't know, let's say bishop e3, and castle. And this setup is very usual and very interesting. And in this setup, it's very important to have a knight on e7 and not on f3. Absolutely. Okay, I played some, not stupid, but simple moves with white. But the concept remains the same. In this setup, the knight belongs to e7. Because you can play immediately f5. This is a well-known setup. Okay, back to the game. And after e5, also my opponent, I have the suspicious that read into my mind. Because he started playing some moves that will get some advantage of my setup. The first move is, it's very important, the sequence. Knight c3, because very probably white realized that knight f3 was not the best move. Knight f3, j6, and knight d5 immediately. This move is very important because now knight e7, of course, is not possible. There is a checkmate in one move. So I cannot play knight e7, but of course I play bishop g7. And now d3. This sequence, knight d5 and d3, is very, very important because now I cannot play knight e7. Knight g7, bishop g5 follows, and that's annoying. Don't see the evaluation bar on the left. I don't like this move because I cannot play f6, and in case of castle, it's possible to play check on f6. King h8, queen d2. This is the position I never want to play. So the problem is that knight e7 is not playable for the moment. What can I play here? Okay, for the moment I decided to play d6, a good move any season, because d6 should be played, otherwise this bishop is locked in. And my opponent played g3, and now it's absolutely obvious that the knight on f3 is badly placed. Badly placed. That's the only difference of the position. And another idea could have been bishop e2. But bishop e2, the bishop on e2 is doing nothing. So my opponent correctly decided to play g3. But the problem of the knight on f3 remains. But now it's up to me. Knight e7, of course, is not playable exactly as in the previous variation one move ago. And here I decided to play a very strange move, to waste the tempo with f6. f6, of course, bishop g5 is not possible. Can I permit myself to waste a single tempo in this position? I think yes, because it's a closed position. You can see here, you can see here this symmetrical formation, and the center is closed, so a single tempo can be wasted. And I decided to play f6. And my opponent continued the development. I did the same. And now h4. This move, in my opinion, is a very good move. Because for the moment, both players have their respective kings in the initial square. Where to castle? At the beginning of the game, of the opening, it was obvious that both players would castle kingside. Okay? But now things are changing. And after h4, it's not obvious which side to castle. And h4, of course, with idea of h5, disturbing black's development. So I had no choice, and I played h5. h5, in my opinion, is the only playable move in this position. And now, take a look. We have 4 bishops, 2 whites and 2 black bishops. Good bishops, bad bishops. It's obvious that this bishop and this bishop are bad bishops for the moment. The other 2 can be good bishops. So it seems to be impossible to trade these 2 bishops for me. But nothing is impossible, as you can see. And at this moment, I decided that the correct plan was to play bishop e6, queen d7, and long castle. And then trying to push some of the pawns in the king side. f5, g5 is if possible, of course, because g5 is not possible and f5 weakens g5, so it's not so easy as it seems. And the next white move is a very typical move, bishop d2. At the first glance, I didn't understand why bishop d2 and not, for example, bishop e3. That seems to be more logical. And then I understood that bishop d2 intended to free this square for the knight, because the next move will be knight e3. And bishop d2, I was thinking, okay, bishop d2, looking for b4, a3, rook b1, b4. This is a typical plan, a standard plan, okay? And I was convinced that white had this in mind. Absolutely not. The game continued in a completely different way. And after bishop d2, I decided to develop my bishop on c8. But where? Bishop e6, of course, is possible. But I played a more active move. Bishop g4, pinning the knight. And this knight, that's very annoying, because I'm threatening knight d4, and this pin, white will never give up. So, after bishop g4, knight e3 is very logical, trying to trade my bishop and removing the pin. And I, of course, intended to play another logical move, that is bishop h6. Now I will trade my bad bishop. Absolutely. On the knight or on the other bishop. It's white to move, and my opponent decided to do the same. Bishop h3. But it's obvious that now black is better, because bishop g2, bishop h3. Knight c3, knight d5, knight e3. Okay, the position is closed, so you can waste some tempi. That's possible. But too many tempi. Too many tempi in this position, and now it becomes clear immediately that in this position white is behind the development. My reply is more or less forced, but it's very good. f5. f5 weakens g5, but that's not a problem because the knight cannot jump for the moment. And in this position, black is surely better. Stockfish does the same. I don't care about stockfish evaluation. Sometimes it's not completely correct. But my opponent decided to take on g4 now, because cannot castle, this bishop is hanging, and if white plays I don't know what, I can play knight d4. So bishop takes g4, sooner or later is forced. Of course, h takes g4, and knight h2. Maybe knight g1 should be better. With the idea of knight e2, knight c3, I don't know. Knight h2, but now the knight is completely out of play. And suddenly another theme appears, the h5. Because if I can play g5, when the rook is pinned, when this pawn is pinned, black is okay, probably winning. And I decided, okay, it's black to move. I played queen d7, preparing the long castle. Knight d5, as you can see, 4 moves with this knight. 4 moves with this knight. This move is a strong move because it threatens a royal fork on f6. So bishop takes d2, it's a check, queen takes, and long castle. And knight f6 is a stupid move in this moment, but the best try for white would have been long castle here. Black is still better, probably knight d4. Yes, knight d4 is correct move, threatening queen a4, attacking something, and as you can see, this knight is completely cut off the play. And after, in this position, probably white can hold. It's very difficult because knight f1 is not possible, because f3 is weak. Black is absolutely better, but not yet winning. But in this position, white lost his nerves and played a losing move. This is a losing move. Oh, we are only at 16 move, and the position seems to be critical for white. And after f4, the position crashed more or less immediately. f4 is a terrible move because it weakens g3 and creates no real counterplay. Absolutely. And in this position, it's very easy to continue with black. I get rid of this dangerous knight, and after c takes d5 on the move, knight d4. Blocking completely this knight, because there is a royal fork on f3. Royal fork on f6, royal fork on f3. The game or the royal forks? Well, there are other forks in this game. After knight d4, what to play? What to play here? White decided, very probably in this position, white knew that his position was more or less losing, and decided to take on e5, creating a strong passive move. Yes, in a normal position, this pawn on d5 would be very strong, would be very dangerous, but in this position counts nothing, more or less nothing, because cannot be pushed, is completely under control, and the critical moment is the position of the king, the white king, because in the center of the board, now f4 is in the air more or less, and if I can open the position against this king, oh, white is completely lost. And correctly, white castle lock. And very probably he didn't consider f4. f4 is more or less a winning move, because white cannot take, because loses immediately after g3. g3, knight where? Knight f1 is the only move, and I take on f4. And queen takes f4 is wrong for 2 reasons. g2 is possible, but it's better to take another royal fork on e2. So after f4, it's not possible to take this pawn. Other moves, maybe rook g1 was a try. I can play a move like f3, creating a real strong passive pawn now. That's a real strong passive pawn. With a fork on e2. The fork on e2 is coming. And then sooner or later g5. With a winning position. And white decides to play king b1, eliminating the royal fork on e2. But in this case, the position is completely lost after g5. g5, the pawn cannot be taken. f4 now is defended. And in case of, oh, sorry, in case of pawn takes g5, I will take on g3, winning a piece. The knight has no moves. As you can see, on f1 there is a rook, and every single white piece is in danger. So after g5, my opponent played rook g1, but that's another losing move, because suddenly I take on h4, winning immediately. Taking on h4 is a winning position. And my opponent resigned very correctly, because it's possible to play g takes h4, rook takes h4, and now the evaluation bar is absolutely obvious. The knight is under attack. There is a fork on f3. I can play g3. Okay, white is completely lost. And of course there are no other moves, because I'm a pawn up, I'm threatening to take on g3. So the position is completely lost for white, and correctly, white resigned. 22 moves, just 22 moves with black reaching a winning position. And I would like to point out something interesting and very important. The game decides its character at the third move, when white played knight f3. The attempt to play a Marcy formation is correct, is possible, but the correct move is knight e2. Because in case of e5, okay, you cannot play a Marcy, that's obvious. But now you can play the similar setup I played during the game. And be careful, it's white to move. And it's white to move first in a chess game. So black cannot copy the moves for a long time. For example, after e5, g3, g6, let's say I copy your moves. Okay, d3, let's say, knight here, knight c3, I played rapid moves, castle, castle, d6, that's a completely even position according to Stockfish, but be careful, it's white to move. And for example, after f4 and idea bishop e3, knight e5, it's not obvious how to level this game with black, because it's white to move. It's impossible to play the same moves for a long time. So the first critical move was at the third white's move, knight f3, and knight f3, in my opinion, is a wrong move. After e5, black has at least the equality immediately after 3 moves. And here white played correctly to avoid my intended setup with knight d7, d6. So I deviated to d6, and after g3, it's obvious that this knight is badly placed. And I tried f6. f6 with idea of knight e7. And this setup after h4, h5, and bishop d2 is completely different. You should be elastic during a chess game. And I was, because I decided to play a completely different pawn setup. As you can see, these 2 pawns are not on h7 and f7. But this position is a critical position, because after knight e3, bishop h6, and f5 here, black is for sure better. Not winning probably, but for sure better. And this is the second critical position, when white decided to play bishop d2, bishop g4, knight e3. Wasting some tempi, not so important, but after bishop h6, bishop h3, in my opinion, is not the correct decision. Very probably the correct move It's not easy to find the correct move here because the queen cannot move. That's the problem. The queen cannot move, and very probably knight takes g4, check, queen takes, pawn takes, knight g1. Okay, this can be, according to the bar evaluation, this is the best chance for white. But it's very sad if white has only this possible continuation, because this bishop is very poor, this knight is in its initial square, white is behind development, and I have two strong knights. One knight will go to d4, the other may be on c6, and f5, g5. My pawns are very elastic and I can push them any moment. Of course, I will play queen d7, castle, king b8, and I think white can hold, but it's a sad position. Okay, back here to the game, and bishop h3, of course, is a mistake. f5 is very strong, and from now on, white's position is completely crushing. Takes, takes. You can see this position is obviously very good for black. And trading my bad bishop, castling, and now the final mistake. f4 is a blunder, and I suppose white lost his nerves because he didn't realize the Morrissey formation. He didn't stop my plan and was convinced to have a bad position. But in this bad position, f4 makes things worse. Takes, takes, knight d4, and here completely winning position. Takes, takes, creating a passive pawn, castle f4, and now things are completely over. King b1, g5. And after pawn takes h4, white resigned. Very correctly resigned. White didn't continue without hope's position. And this position, this game was absolutely a very interesting one, and not only, but also a very important game, instructive game, because this setup, this double setup, reflects the character of the players. Maybe White tried to play a Morrissey formation, and I tried to create another setup, well-known setup. And the result was that White didn't realize any of them. Okay, I hope you enjoyed with this game, and it's Antelacus. It's me, Antelacus. Thank you very much. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have also a Twitch channel, also called Antelacus, of course, and you can see what I'm doing here. And thank you very much, and see you next commented chess game with Antelacus. Thank you very much, and bye.